My daughter stole my villa and handed it to her husband's parents. She looked me in the eye and said, "It is theirs now. You are forbidden to enter." I forced myself to smile. But inside, anger burned hotter than ever. That villa was more than just property. It was my wife's dream and my life's work. Yet my only child stood there, treating me like a stranger. I walked away quietly. But when the day came for them to move in, I had prepared something none of them would ever forget. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if your daughter betrayed you by giving away your house to her in-laws? The slam of my car door echoed louder than I expected, a sharp crack that cut through the stillness of the pines around Big Bear Lake. I adjusted the strap of my weekend bag across my shoulder, already imagining the quiet hours I thought were waiting for me inside. 3 days of peace, far from the constant grind of Los Angeles real estate projects, far from the endless phone calls, emails, and late-night meetings. The drive from the city had taken a little over 2 hours. But for me, it was worth every minute just to reach this villa. My villa. The place had always been more than a house. Maria and I had poured decades of sweat and sacrifice into making it ours. When I walked those stone steps, I could still see her laughter in the way the sunlight hit the terrace, hear her voice in the way the breeze moved through the tall pines. Since she passed 3 years ago, I had returned here often, needing its silence the way a man in the desert needs water. This house had become a sanctuary for grief, a place where I could remember who I was before sorrow dulled everything. That is why what I saw stopped me cold. 2 figures leaned casually against the terrace railing. White bathrobes, steaming mugs in hand, looking out over the lake as if it belonged to them. One was Sophie, my daughter, my only child. Her long, dark hair caught the afternoon light just as her mother's once had, but her expression was something Maria had never worn. Cold, closed, triumphant. Next to her stood Ryan, her husband, shifting uneasily when his eyes met mine. What the hell? The words slipped out before I could stop them. My grip loosened on my bag, and it hit the gravel with a dull thud. Sophie straightened at the sound of my voice. For a split second, I hoped her face would soften, that she would run to me the way she used to as a little girl. Instead, her features hardened into something sharp, unyielding. She raised her voice so it carried easily across the distance. "Dad, you cannot stay here. Ryan and I are using the villa this weekend." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she were pointing out the weather. The words felt like a slap. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," she said flatly. She placed her coffee mug on the railing with a clink. "We are here first, and we are not leaving. You need to go." Ryan muttered something under his breath, his eyes darting between us. But Sophie waved him off. The bathrobe she wore slipped slightly open at the collar, and she yanked it closed with a sharp movement, as though her irritation extended even to the fabric on her body. I took a tentative step closer, still trying to make sense of her words. "Sophie, this is my villa. My name is on the deed. I worked 30 years to pay for this place. Your mother and I built this dream together. You know that I do not care." Her voice cut across my explanation like glass. "We are using it. You are not welcome right now." I stared at her. My own daughter, standing on the terrace Maria and I had tiled by hand. The terrace where Sophie herself had run barefoot as a child. Sticky popsicle juice running down her chin. My throat tightened. "I just drove 2 hours, sweetheart. I only wanted to spend a quiet weekend. That is all. Get out of here and do not bother us," she snapped. Her words were louder now, echoing against the water. You were just in the way anyway. In the way. The phrase sank into me with the weight of a stone. This was my property, my refuge. The place Maria and I had dreamed of retiring in together. And here was my daughter, dismissing me as if I were nothing more than an intruder. Ryan looked everywhere except at me, his face reddening above the bathrobe collar. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, but he said nothing. His silence spoke volumes. I felt my knees creak as I bent to retrieve my bag, the motion painfully slow. I was 62 years old, but in that moment, I felt decades older. My chest ached, not from age, but from betrayal. Fine, I managed, the word tasting like ash on my tongue. Good, Sophie replied instantly. Next time, call first. Next time, call first to use my own house. I turned, bag heavy in my hand, each step away from the villa feeling like a retreat from a battlefield I had not known I was fighting. Behind me, Sophie's voice softened, drifting on the air as she turned back to Ryan. They were already making dinner plans, dismissing me from their world as easily as brushing away a fly. By the time I reached my car, my vision blurred. I forced myself to start the engine, the low purr of German engineering steady under my hands. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as I backed out of the driveway, watching in the rearview mirror as Sophie raised her coffee mug again. A toast, perhaps, or maybe a farewell. The road stretched empty and long ahead of me, winding back toward Los Angeles. Each mile carried me further from the place I had built with Maria, further from the daughter I thought I knew. The silence inside the car was suffocating, broken only by the mechanical hum of the tires against the asphalt. I had sacrificed so much for Sophie, paid for her college, covered her wedding, helped with her first apartment. Every time she had called me with some crisis, I had given in, telling myself Maria would have wanted it that way. Be patient with her, Daniel. I used to hear Maria's voice in my mind. She is still grieving. But grief did not look like this. Grief did not cast a father out of his own home. By the time I crossed back onto the main highway, one truth had rooted itself deep in my chest. Something had shifted between us. Something I had been too blind to see until now. My daughter was no longer just entitled. She was dangerous in her entitlement. I drove on, the weight of that realization pressing harder than the steering wheel against my palms. Back in Los Angeles, Monday night settled over the city like a heavy blanket. My study smelled faintly of old wood polish and the coffee I had been nursing for hours, now cold in the cup beside me. I sat slouched in my leather chair, staring at nothing, my mind still trapped at Big Bear Lake. 3 days had passed since Sophie had forced me out of the villa. Each morning I had woken expecting her to call, to explain, to apologize, to offer some flimsy excuse. But the silence had stretched, thin and suffocating, until even hope began to feel like self-delusion. I thought about Maria as I sat there. She used to fill this house with laughter. Her absence had created an emptiness I could never fill. So I had poured myself into Sophie. She became the focus of all my love, all my effort, all my sacrifice. Maria's voice often lingered in my mind. Be patient with her, Daniel. She is hurting too. For 3 years, I had repeated that line like scripture, bending under Sophie's moods, giving into every demand, convincing myself that it was grief speaking through her. But grief fades. What I saw at the villa was not grief. It was greed, entitlement, something sharp and deliberate. The phone's sudden ring sliced through my thoughts. I snatched it up, pulse quickening when I saw her name on the display. Sophie. Dad, she said, her voice flat, businesslike. stripped of every ounce of warmth. Listen carefully. Ryan and I have decided. The villa now belongs to his parents. For a moment, I could not breathe. My hand froze with the mug halfway to my lips. What did you just say? You heard me, she repeated, cold as steel. Victor and Linda are moving in. From now on, it is their home. You are forbidden from going there anymore. The leather of my chair creaked as I sat forward, heat rushing to my face. Sophie, have you lost your mind? That villa is mine. My name is on the deed. I paid for every tile, every brick. You cannot just... Actually, I can. She cut in, her voice like a blade. And I already did. You hardly use the place, Dad. They need a home more than you do. You will be fine. 30 years of work surged into my mind. 30 years of 12-hour days, late nights, deals that had nearly broken me. 30 years of building a real estate portfolio from nothing, of sweating and scraping so Maria and I could one day sit on that terrace with peace. I heard myself shout before I realized I was shouting. It is my villa. I worked 3 decades to buy that place. Her laugh held no trace of humor. You are being ridiculous. Selfish. After everything Ryan and I have done for you since Mom died. That snapped something in me. My grip tightened on the phone until my knuckles whitened. Everything you have done for me? Sophie, I paid for your wedding. I covered your college loans. I helped with your car, your apartment, every last one of your requests. Do not twist this. That is what fathers are supposed to do, she snapped. Besides, you are old and alone now. What do you need with a villa that big? What good does it do you sitting empty? Old and alone. The words landed like a hammer against my chest. For years I had feared that phrase. It was the shadow that stalked me since Maria's death. And now it had been hurled at me by my own daughter. Maria's gentle voice whispered in my mind again, telling me to be patient, to understand. But Maria had never heard Sophie speak this way, with such cruelty, such deliberate calculation. They are Ryan's parents, I said, my voice lower now, shaking from the inside. To me, they are strangers. Why should they live in the house Maria and I built together? Because they are family now, Sophie said, sharp and triumphant. And unlike you, they will actually appreciate what they are getting. Something hardened inside me. It was as if a door long shut finally locked into place. My voice came out steady, calm, almost foreign to my own ears. No. The line went silent for several seconds. I could almost hear her confusion crackling across the connection. What did you just say? I said no, Sophie. The answer is no. You cannot give away my villa. You cannot take what does not belong to you. You cannot say no to me, she hissed, her composure finally cracking. That villa is wasted on you anyway. Victor and Linda need it. You will not stand in the way. I sat up straighter, feeling something in my spine I had not felt in years. Resolve. They can find their own solution. They are not taking mine. Her breathing grew louder, faster until her words exploded through the line. You are selfish. Mom would be ashamed of you. That cut deeper than anything. To throw Maria into this, to weaponize her memory against me, was a cruelty I had never thought my daughter capable of. Maria, who had loved Sophie with every fiber of her being, would have been horrified. Your mother would be ashamed, I said softly, but not of me, of what you have become. The sound of her sharp intake of breath was like thunder in my ear. How dare you? And then, for the first time in our lives, I hung up on my daughter. The silence in the room afterward roared louder than any argument. My heart hammered against my ribs. The phone sat in my lap. black screen reflecting my own stunned face. Outside, the traffic of Los Angeles hummed along as if nothing had happened. But inside my study, everything had shifted. The phone buzzed again, almost instantly. Sophie's name glowed on the display. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I did not answer. Instead, I turned the phone off completely, placing it face down on the desk. For the first time in 3 years, I had said no. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something close to strength returning. The feeling lingered the next morning, like a new muscle I had not used in years. Tuesday dawned bright, sunlight streaming into my study as I made myself a fresh pot of coffee. I sat at the desk where the night before I had hung up on Sophie. And for the first time since Maria's death, I did not feel like a man defeated. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my laptop, not from fear this time, but from purpose. I typed the words slowly at first, my real estate developer's brain clicking back into motion. California property laws, ownership rights, transfer requirements, trust structures. The language was familiar, a terrain I had once known well, back when I built my career on contracts and negotiations. It came back to me like an old skill hidden under dust. Sophie thought she was dealing with an old man who had forgotten how to fight. She was about to remember the man who had clawed his way up in one of the most cutthroat businesses in Los Angeles. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the desk beside me. Texts from Sophie. Dad, we need to talk about yesterday. Do not be stubborn about this. You will only make things worse. Victor and Linda are coming to see the villa this weekend. Each message I read tightened the knot in my chest. She was not apologizing. She was not reconsidering. She was doubling down, her words dripping with entitlement. For years I had accepted those messages as just Sophie being Sophie, the grieving daughter, the fragile child I needed to shield. But now the pattern stood out with brutal clarity. This was not grief anymore. This was calculated pressure. I deleted the messages without replying. If she wanted to push, she was going to find resistance this time. By mid-morning, I drove downtown to see David Lee. He had been my attorney for nearly 15 years, handling countless real estate transactions for me. Sharp mind, calm demeanor, a man who never wasted words. His office sat in a high-rise overlooking the Los Angeles harbor, all glass and polished wood, the kind of place where business was conducted quietly but decisively. Daniel. David greeted me warmly, rising from behind his desk to shake my hand. It has been too long. What brings you in? I sank into the leather chair opposite him, the same chair I had occupied during so many contract reviews. But today felt different. I need to talk about property protection, I said slowly. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Commercial or residential? Residential. The villa at Big Bear Lake. He leaned back, studying me carefully. What is the issue? I hesitated, the words bitter in my mouth. My daughter is attempting to give it away. To her husband's parents, the silence stretched a beat too long before David spoke again, his tone softer now. Family disputes are the most dangerous kind, Daniel. They get messy quickly. I know, I admitted. That is why I need to know my options. He picked up a notepad and pen, his motions brisk and precise. First, we review the ownership documentation. Make sure everything is ironclad. Second, we can establish protections. Trust structures, LLCS, anything that creates distance between you and direct transfer. Third, if there are threats or coercion, we document everything. The word coercion hit me like a hammer. That was exactly what Sophie had been trying to do, dressing it up in the language of family duty. "How long would this take?" I asked. "Basic review of documentation, a few days," David said. "More advanced protection, a couple of weeks." I thought about Sophie's last message. Victor and Linda coming this weekend, 4 days away. I shook my head. I may not have that long. David set down his pen and studied my face. "Daniel, is someone trying to force you off your own property?" The question cut straight through me. I nodded. For the first time in years of working together, I saw David's professional mask harden into something more personal. "Then we start immediately. Bring me copies of the deed, transfer records, anything tied to the villa's history. The sooner I have it, the faster I can move." "I can have everything to you by tomorrow morning," I promised. "Good. And Daniel, document everything. Conversations, text messages, phone calls. Courts care about contemporary records. The more you preserve, the stronger your position." His words steadied me. This was not just about emotions anymore. It was about facts, documents, law. Terrain I knew how to navigate. As I left his office, the elevator mirrors reflected a man older than his years, shoulders stooped from 3 years of grief. But there was something new in my eyes. Determination. My phone buzzed again as I reached the car. Sophie's name flashed across the screen. This time, I answered. "Finally," she snapped. "We need to resolve this nonsense. Stop being childish." "The only nonsense," I said calmly, "is your belief that you can steal my property." "How dare you use that word with me?" she spat. "What else do you call it when someone takes a house that does not belong to them?" Silence. For once, she did not have an immediate answer. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. Softer, almost calculated. "Dad, you do not understand. Ryan's parents are struggling. Linda lost her job. Victor's pension barely covers their rent. They need stability. You could show generosity." It was the same strategy she had used since high school. Appeal to sympathy when demands failed. It might have worked once, but not today. "That is unfortunate," I said, keeping my voice even. "But their hardship does not entitle them to my villa." "You could be generous," she repeated, her voice tightening. "Show some family spirit." "Like the family spirit you showed when you threw me out of my own house?" I asked quietly. Her silence stretched again. Then her voice rose, sharp and angry. "Fine. Do what you want. But Victor and Linda are coming this Saturday to see the place. They have already made arrangements. This is happening, Dad. Whether you like it or not, the line went dead." I stood frozen beside my car in the parking garage, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the emptiness. The words echoed inside me. Victor and Linda are coming this Saturday. She had already planned everything, as if my villa were hers to hand over. Above me, sunlight filtered weakly through the high-rise windows. Outside, Los Angeles moved on with its endless traffic and noise, indifferent to my private war. But inside me, something sharpened further. Sophie thought this was a done deal. She thought I was beaten before the battle had begun. She was wrong. Wednesday morning came crisp and clear, but I had been awake since before dawn, my mind alive with plans. For years, I had told myself to endure Sophie's entitlement for the sake of family. I had let her wear me down because I did not want to lose her. But the moment she told me Victor and Linda were arriving this weekend, something in me shifted permanently. The time for patience was over. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, I carried a notebook filled with sketches and bullet points across the street to my neighbor Alan's house. Alan was in his early 40s, a wiry man with sharp eyes, that always seemed to gleam with curiosity. He worked in software development and spent most of his time in front of glowing monitors, solving problems I barely understood. Last winter, I had helped him repair flooding damage in his basement when a pipe burst, and he had sworn he owed me a favor. This morning, I planned to collect on that debt. Alan opened the door in his usual uniform, faded jeans and a t-shirt from some tech startup I had never heard of. His glasses slid slightly down his nose, and he looked like he had not slept much. "Daniel," he said, surprised. "Everything all right?" "Actually," I said, stepping inside, "I need your help with something unusual." He led me into his home office, where 3 wide monitors glowed with lines of code. Wires, circuit boards, and gadgets cluttered every surface. Alan gestured toward a chair, curiosity already flickering across his face. "What kind of project are we talking about?" I took a slow breath. "Home automation, lights, speakers, motion sensors, maybe even water systems. I want to create something that will make intruders regret ever stepping foot inside my villa." Alan's eyebrows shot up. Then he grinned. "So, you want a haunted house, but smart?" "Close enough," I said. He swiveled in his chair, eyes sparkling like a kid at Christmas. "This sounds like fun. Terrifying, but fun. What exactly do you want it to do?" "Imagine," I said, leaning forward, "someone enters the house thinking it is theirs. The lights start flashing. A voice announces they are trespassing. If they keep moving, the faucets and showers start running. If they still refuse to leave, things escalate. Shadows on the walls, strange sounds, whispers. I want them terrified. I want them running." Alan's grin widened. "You came to the right person." Within hours, we were loading his SUV with equipment that looked like it belonged in a laboratory rather than a suburban garage. Motion detectors, programmable LED strips, wireless speakers, hidden cameras, water control modules, and a tablet packed with custom software. He even tossed in a few projectors, mumbling something about psychological effects. The drive to Big Bear Lake passed quickly as Alan outlined the possibilities. "We can set cascading triggers," he explained, his hands moving animatedly as he spoke. "Motion sets off lights. Lights trigger audio. Audio cues can set off water systems. It becomes a chain reaction. The more they move, the worse it gets," I nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I want them to feel like the house itself has turned against them." Alan chuckled. "Oh, believe me, by the time I am finished, they will think the villa is possessed." When we pulled into the driveway, Alan whistled low. "Beautiful place. Shame they are trying to steal it. But they picked the wrong target inside." Alan moved with astonishing efficiency. Within minutes, he had mapped out where sensors should go. The entryway, the living room, the hallway outside the bedrooms, every major room. He mounted small black devices near the ceilings, their tiny indicator lights barely visible. I followed behind, watching as he ran wires discreetly and connected them to his tablet. "Here," he explained, pointing to the first setup. "The second anyone walks through this entryway, the system will trigger the living room lights to strobe and a voice to announce, 'You are trespassing. Leave immediately.'" "And if they do not leave?" I asked. "Then phase 2, Alan said, eyes gleaming. "The water system engages. Every faucet, every shower, full blast. Add some audio escalation. Warning, security protocols activated. Authorities notified. Believe me, they will run." By mid-afternoon, the villa was alive with hidden defenses. Alan tested each component with boyish excitement. Lights strobed violently when I stepped into the living room. A deep, commanding voice boomed from speakers in the walls. The kitchen sink burst to life, spraying water at full pressure. The bathroom showers hissed and thundered. I could not help but smile. "This is brilliant. Wait until you see the projections," Alan said, wheeling in a compact projector. He set it on a bookshelf and adjusted its angle. Suddenly, ghostly shadows flickered across the walls, figures that seemed to move just beyond the edge of vision. "The human brain always tries to make sense of patterns," he explained. "They will think they are seeing people in the corners of their eyes. It is terrifying because it feels real even when it is not." The effect sent a shiver down my spine, and I was the one who knew it was fake. By evening, the system was fully operational. Alan handed me the tablet with a proud smile. "You can monitor everything from here. Live camera feeds, system status, manual overrides. The whole villa is now a fortress disguised as a haunted house." I held the device like it was a weapon. In a way, it was. "Thank you, Alan," I said quietly. "You have no idea what this means to me." He clapped me on the shoulder. "You helped me when I was drowning in water last year. Call this payback. Besides, I cannot wait to hear their reaction when the place comes alive." We left the villa locked, systems armed, sensors waiting. As we drove back down the mountain, I felt something I had not felt since Maria died. Anticipation. For once, I was not dreading the weekend. I was waiting for it. Saturday afternoon arrived. I sat in my study, 3 monitors glowing before me, each showing a live feed from the villa. The cameras Alan had installed captured everything: the driveway, the front porch, the terrace, and each major room. The app on my phone showed all systems ready, motion sensors armed, audio sequences loaded, lighting patterns programmed, water controls online, projections primed. At 2:25 p.m., a dark blue minivan appeared on the approach road, right on schedule. My daughter's punctuality had always been one of her few consistent traits. The vehicle rolled into my driveway with casual confidence, as though they already owned the place. Sophie climbed out first, her dark hair catching the afternoon light as she stretched. She looked around like a queen surveying her new kingdom. Ryan followed, carrying luggage. Behind them came Victor and Linda, retirement-aged but eager, their eyes alight with the thrill of acquisition. Linda even carried a pair of house slippers, ready to settle in as though she had lived there for years. They gathered at the back of the van, unloading boxes and suitcases with the rhythm of people preparing for permanence, not a short stay. Through the cameras, I watched them approach the front door as a united group. 4 people absolutely certain that the villa was now theirs. Sophie led the way, gesturing grandly toward the entrance. Her body language radiated triumph. Ryan followed, glancing at the windows as though imagining how to rearrange furniture. Victor and Linda moved behind them, chatting eagerly about where their belongings would go. I sat back in my chair, phone in hand, finger hovering over the activation control. Let them get comfortable first. Through the villa cameras, I watched Sophie swing open the door with the key I had once entrusted to her, the same spare she must have copied without a second thought. She stepped inside as though she had always owned the place, Ryan carrying a suitcase behind her. Victor and Linda followed eagerly, their voices carrying into the entryway microphone. "Oh, it is even more beautiful than Sophie described," Linda said, her tone thick with wonder. "I cannot believe this will be our new home." Victor chuckled, adjusting the strap of his duffel. "Some people have all the luck." "Finally, things are going our way." Ryan nodded, placing his bag on the floor. "Dad and Mom, this is where you belong. Sophie and I want you to feel at home immediately. Sophie's voice rose above them all, proud and commanding. "This place is ours now." Dad had his time. He barely even used it. "Now it belongs to us," the words sliced through me, even from miles away. But instead of anger, I felt a cold, calm satisfaction. They thought victory was theirs. Tonight, they would learn otherwise. Hours passed as they unpacked. I watched them wander through each room, exploring closets, opening cupboards, inspecting furniture Maria and I had chosen together decades ago. I saw Linda slip her feet into the slippers she had brought, shuffling around the kitchen like she already owned it. Sophie poured glasses of wine and raised a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice ringing with triumph. I waited. Night came slowly, shadows stretching across the pine trees outside, the lake shimmering in moonlight. By 10 o'clock, the villa was quiet. The cameras showed Sophie and Ryan in the master bedroom. Victor and Linda settled into the guest room. The perfect moment. I tapped the activation command on my phone. The villa erupted into life. Every light in the house exploded into rapid strobing patterns. White, red, blue, a dizzying assault that turned the peaceful bedrooms into a disorienting nightmare. At the same moment, water blasted from every faucet and shower, a deafening roar of rushing liquid echoing through the rooms. Then came the voice. "Attention! Unauthorized intrusion detected. You are trespassing. Leave this property immediately." The message boomed from hidden speakers in every wall, cold and mechanical, impossible to ignore. On the master bedroom feed, I saw Sophie bolt upright in bed, her hair tangled around her face. Ryan scrambled beside her, shouting something I could not hear over the chaos. They staggered into the hallway, blinking furiously against the flashing lights. In the guest room, Linda's scream cut through the microphone. She clutched at Victor, her face pale with terror. "What is happening?" "I do not know," Victor shouted, his voice cracking. "The lights, the water, it is all going crazy." The projections flickered to life next. Shadowy figures danced across the walls, stretching long and thin, moving just beyond the edge of sight. The human mind always seeks meaning in shapes. To them, it looked like strangers pacing silently through the villa. Linda shrieked again, pointing at a figure that seemed to cross the living room wall. "There is someone here." "No, it is impossible," Victor said, but his voice betrayed his own fear. The system escalated exactly as Alan had designed it. Every 30 seconds of continued movement triggered a new wave of chaos. The voice grew louder, more urgent. "Warning, security protocols activated. Authorities have been notified. Vacate immediately." Ryan rushed toward the electrical panel, yanking at the breaker switches in desperation. Nothing happened. Alan's backup power system hummed silently in the background, untouched by their attempts. "Why will it not shut off?" Ryan yelled, panic rising. "It is the house," Sophie shouted, her voice trembling for the first time. "The house is doing this." She stumbled into the living room, disoriented by the strobing lights. Projections swirled across the walls, ghostly silhouettes whispering at the edges of vision. The speakers layered sounds over the chaos. Footsteps echoing from empty hallways, creaking floorboards where no one walked, whispers that seemed to float from unseen mouths. Linda covered her ears and wailed. "This place is haunted. We have to get out." Victor clutched her arm, his eyes wild. "The doors?" "Get to the doors." They ran for the front entrance, but Alan had programmed a short lock delay. For 30 seconds, the deadbolts refused to release, just long enough to induce panic. Ryan yanked at the handle, shouting in frustration. "It is not opening. It has locked us in." From my chair, I watched with cold detachment. These people had tried to steal the house Maria and I had built together. Now they were prisoners of their own arrogance. The system reached its peak just after midnight. All elements activated at once. Lights strobing in blinding pulses, water gushing in a deafening roar, projections sweeping across every wall, voices booming warnings, and whispers crawling through the speakers like ghostly breaths. The villa had become a nightmare factory, each room designed to erode their sanity. On the cameras, I saw Sophie in the hallway, her once confident posture gone, her face twisted with disbelief. "This is impossible," she screamed, spinning in circles. "Houses do not do this." Ryan's face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead as he stumbled after her. "We have to get out. We cannot stay here." In the guest room, Linda collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Victor tried to lift her, his own face etched with terror. "We cannot stay another minute," he whispered hoarsely. But the house would not let them go so easily. Every motion triggered more chaos. The harder they tried to flee, the louder and more overwhelming the system became. By 3 a.m, they were exhausted, their frantic movements slowing, their nerves shredded. I leaned back in my chair, watching it all unfold on my monitors. I could almost hear Maria's voice in my ear, gentle but firm. "You have been too patient, Daniel. Too forgiving. Now they will learn." Finally, at dawn, the system's programmed cycle released the door locks. The bolts clicked open just as the first light of morning spilled across the lake. Ryan yanked the front door wide, and all 4 of them stumbled into the driveway, blinking against the early sunlight. They looked like survivors of a war. Clothes soaked from the water systems, faces pale from the flashing lights, eyes wide with sleepless terror. Sophie clutched Ryan's arm, her confidence shattered, while Linda sobbed openly. Victor guided her toward the minivan, his own shoulders slumped in defeat. As they collapsed into the vehicle, my phone lit up. Sophie's name glowed across the screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, keeping my tone calm, almost pleasant. Her voice tore through the speaker, raw and trembling with rage. "What did you do, you sick old man?" I did not answer at first. I let her words hang there, heavy and desperate. In the silence, I could hear Linda sobbing in the background and Ryan shouting angrily about broken locks and flashing lights. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, measured. "Good morning, Sophie. How was your night at the villa?" Her scream nearly shattered the phone. "Do not play games with me. The lights, the water, the voices. You orchestrated all of it. You traumatized us. You humiliated us." "I was here all night," I replied, keeping my tone even. 200 miles away in Los Angeles. How could I possibly do what you were describing? "You know exactly how," she spat. "I do not know how you pulled it off, but I will find out. You cannot get away with this." Her words tumbled over themselves, fueled by panic and exhaustion. She ranted about Linda collapsing, about Victor shouting that the villa was cursed, about how the police came at dawn and found nothing. The more she spoke, the clearer her desperation became. I said nothing more. I let her fill the silence with her own fear. When she finally paused to breathe, I added softly, "Maybe the house just does not like strangers." The line went dead a moment later. For the first time in 3 years, I slept soundly. 3 days later, just as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sound of car doors slamming echoed through my driveway. I had been expecting them. Through my study window, I saw Sophie storming up the path, Ryan right behind her. Their faces were red with anger, their movements sharp with aggression. Sophie pounded on my door with the flat of her hand. "Open up, Dad. We need to talk." I moved slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. When I opened the door, Sophie shoved past me, her eyes blazing. Ryan followed, his fists clenched. "How dare you?" she hissed, whirling on me. "How dare you turn the villa into some kind of twisted trap?" I folded my arms across my chest. Smart home security systems are popular these days. They keep out people who do not belong. Ryan stepped closer, towering over me, his voice low and threatening. "Enough of this nonsense. Either you stop playing games and hand over the villa, or you forget you ever had a daughter." Sophie's words struck harder than his presence. She stepped forward, her face twisted with fury. "That is right. If you do not give us the villa, you lose me forever. No phone calls, no visits, no grandchildren, nothing. You will die alone, Dad. Alone and forgotten, just like Mom for years." Words like that would have gutted me. I would have begged, pleaded, done anything to hold on to her. I would have written checks, signed papers, sacrificed my own dignity just to avoid hearing those words. But not anymore. Not after everything she had done. I looked her straight in the eyes, calm and steady. "You already made sure of that the moment you tried to steal from me." Her lips curled in rage. "We are not stealing. We are taking what is wasted on you. Victor and Linda deserve that villa more than you ever will again." "Interesting perspective," I said, my tone dry. "You dismiss me, the man who built it, and hand it to strangers. All in the name of family." "They are family now," Sophie shouted, her voice echoing against the walls of my foyer. "Unlike you, they care about us. They respect us. You are nothing but a bitter old man clinging to a house you barely use." Ryan stepped in again, his voice sharp. "We are giving you one last chance. Transfer the villa to Victor and Linda, or you will regret it." I tilted my head slightly. "Regret it how?" Sophie's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a hiss. "We will destroy you. We will ruin your reputation. We will make sure everyone in your circle knows what a selfish, paranoid man you have become. You will be isolated, shunned, broken." Ryan nodded. "She is right. We have connections. We can make your life miserable." I studied their faces, the venom in Sophie's glare, the arrogance in Ryan's stance. Once, this would have broken me. But now, all I felt was a quiet certainty. They were bluffing. They were swinging wildly because they thought intimidation was their strongest weapon. They had no idea I had already moved beyond their reach. I walked slowly toward the study, their eyes following me with suspicion. I gestured for them to stay where they were. "You want to threaten me? You want to cut me off? Fine. But before you go any further, there is something you should know." Sophie folded her arms, trying to maintain control. "What is that?" I turned, meeting her gaze squarely. "The villa is no longer mine to give. I already made arrangements." The color drained from her face. For the first time in weeks, she looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" I let the words sink in before answering. "I made a legal transfer. The villa does not belong to me anymore." Ryan's voice cracked with disbelief. "What are you talking about? Who did you transfer it to?" I held their eyes, steady and calm, letting the tension thicken. "You will find out soon enough." That line had silenced Sophie and Ryan in my foyer, but the storm was far from over. I knew them too well. Threats and manipulation were their currency, and they would never accept a quiet retreat. They would press harder, convinced they could still intimidate me. But what they did not understand was that this war had already ended the moment I sat down with David Lee. I had made the one move they could not anticipate, the one counterstroke they had no defense against. 2 mornings later, I sat in David's conference room downtown, the smell of polished oak and fresh paper filling the air. Sunlight streamed in through the tall glass windows, glinting off the legal folders spread across the table. At precisely 10 o'clock, the door opened, and Sophie entered like a general marching into enemy territory. Her chin was high, her eyes blazing with determination. Ryan followed, his posture aggressive, while Victor and Linda shuffled in behind them, their faces a mixture of hope and lingering fear from their night at the villa. Sophie dropped into the chair across from me, her voice cutting the air. "Let us resolve this once and for all. We are here for the transfer of the villa." Ryan crossed his arms, leaning forward as though his presence alone might intimidate me. "No more games, Daniel. Just sign the papers and be done with it." Victor and Linda took seats along the side wall, whispering to each other. Linda's hands twisted nervously in her lap, her lips moving in silent prayers. I said nothing at first. Instead, I folded my hands on the table, letting the silence stretch until even Sophie's confidence wavered. Finally, I spoke, my tone calm and deliberate. "You misunderstand. There is no transfer for you to demand." Sophie leaned forward, her voice sharp. "What do you mean, no transfer? You still own the villa. You can sign it over today." I turned to David. "Would you explain, please?" David adjusted his glasses, his face professional and composed. He opened the folder in front of him and spoke with the precise authority of a man used to delivering final decisions. "Mr. Martinez no longer owns the property at Big Bear Lake. On Monday morning, he completed a transfer of ownership. The villa is now the legal property of the Horizon Foundation for Housing Assistance." The silence that followed was thick, like air before a storm. Sophie blinked, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Ryan sat up straighter, confusion flooding his face. Linda gasped, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. "What?" Sophie finally managed, her voice cracking. You cannot do that." David remained steady. "Mr. Martinez had full rights as the legal owner. The transfer is complete, legally binding, and irreversible." Ryan slammed his palm against the table. "This is ridiculous. You are lying. This is some trick." "It is no trick," David said firmly. "The documents are signed, notarized, and recorded. The villa belongs to the foundation." Now Sophie's chair screeched against the floor as she jumped to her feet. "You did this out of spite, just to hurt me." I met her glare calmly. "No, Sophie. I did this to protect what your mother and I built from people who tried to take it by force." Victor finally spoke, his voice small and strained. "But what about us? Where do we go now?" I looked at him evenly. "You will find other arrangements, just as you expected me to do when you tried to push me out of my own house." Linda's eyes welled with tears. "But Sophie promised." "Promises mean nothing," David cut in gently. "Property rights are not transferred by family discussions. They are transferred by law. And the law is clear." Sophie's face twisted with rage, her voice rising to a shriek. "You have ruined our future. You destroyed everything we planned." Ryan's hand gripped her arm, trying to steady her, but his own face had gone pale. He understood the implications, the financial hole this loss would leave them in. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet but steady. "You tried to manipulate me. You tried to use guilt, threats, even your mother's memory to take what was never yours. Now it is out of your reach forever." Sophie's hands trembled on the edge of the table. Her voice dropped to a whisper, venom dripping from each word. "This is not over." I studied her, seeing not the daughter Maria and I had raised, but a stranger shaped by greed and arrogance. For the first time, I felt no urge to argue, no desire to plead. I felt only clarity. "Yes, Sophie," I said quietly. "It is." She flinched as though I had struck her, then turned on her heel. "We will find another way to destroy you. You will regret crossing us." Ryan pushed back his chair, his jaw tight. "Come on," he muttered, guiding her toward the door. Victor and Linda followed, their expressions hollow, the weight of defeat dragging at their shoulders. At the doorway, Sophie turned back, her eyes burning with fury. "You may think you won this, but we are not finished. You will pay for this." I held her gaze with calm certainty. Inside, I already knew the truth. The war was over, and she had lost. That knowledge stayed with me in the days that followed. The house felt different, lighter somehow. For years, every room had echoed with the absence of Maria, and every phone call with Sophie had carried its own demand or disappointment. But now, for the first time since my wife's death, I felt something close to balance returning. I had stopped giving. I had stopped surrendering. I had finally learned to say no. The silence in my study was no longer suffocating. It was restful. I could sit with a cup of coffee and hear only the quiet hum of the city outside without feeling that deep hollow in my chest. The anger that had burned inside me at the villa, when Sophie told me I was old and alone, was gone. What remained was resolve, and a strange, almost serene satisfaction. On Thursday morning, I packed a bag and drove north. The spring air was cool and clear as the road wound through the mountains toward Big Bear Lake. For 3 years, the villa had been a place of grief, a place where I went to cling to Maria's memory and endure Sophie's demands. But today, it felt like something else entirely. Mine again. When I pulled into the driveway, the villa looked exactly as it always had. The terrace caught the sunlight. The pine trees whispered in the breeze. But it was not the same house I had left weeks before. It was cleansed, freed of the false claims and manipulations that had stained it. I stepped inside with my own key, closing the door firmly behind me. The faint scent of cedar and lake air filled my lungs. The rooms were silent now, no strobing lights, no voices, no chaotic water. Alan's system had served its purpose, and I had dismantled the last of the equipment the night before, returning the villa to its natural state. What remained was simple, steady peace. I carried my mug of coffee out onto the terrace where Maria and I had spent so many mornings. The lake spread before me, shimmering in the late morning sun. The water caught the light the same way it had when we first bought this place, the same way it had when Maria laughed beside me, promising we would grow old here together. I sat in the chair she once loved, looking out at the same horizon, and I realized something I had never admitted aloud. I had been confusing patience with surrender. When Maria asked me to be patient with Sophie, she meant patience for grief, patience for healing. She never meant for me to become a doormat, to let my daughter's entitlement consume my dignity. Somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that giving endlessly was love. But love without respect is not love at all. The truth hit me with quiet clarity. I had not just been trying to keep Sophie close. I had been afraid of being alone, afraid of losing the last piece of family I had left. And in that fear, I had allowed myself to be used. Now, with the villa secure, I understood something deeper. Protecting myself was not cruelty. It was survival. It was respect, not only for me, but for the life Maria and I had built. I thought about Sophie's words in the lawyer's office, the venom when she told me this was not over. But the war was. Over. She had lost her leverage, lost her chance to take what was not hers. Maybe one day she would reflect, maybe she would come back changed, humbled, or maybe she never would. That was her choice. I could not control what Sophie became, but I could control myself. I could set boundaries. I could choose dignity over surrender. As the sun rose higher, I felt something I had not felt in 3 years. Peace. Not the fragile peace of appeasement, not the shaky peace of avoiding conflict, but a deeper peace. The kind that comes when you finally stand up for yourself and refuse to be broken. Maria would have been proud. Not of the haunted house revenge, though I admit a smile tugged at my lips when I remembered Linda shrieking about ghosts in the walls, but of the strength it took to reclaim what mattered. She had married a determined man, a fighter, someone who built an empire brick by brick. And I had finally remembered who that man was. The lake sparkled, a mirror of clarity. For the first time since Maria's death, I felt free of the heavy fog that had wrapped around me. I was not the grieving widower Sophie thought she could manipulate. I was Daniel Martinez, a man who had rebuilt himself through fire and loss, a man who finally understood that boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are doors to let in only those who deserve entry. I stayed on the terrace until the sun slid behind the pines, drinking in the silence, the calm, the sense that life could still hold meaning beyond betrayal. For years I had lived in fear of being alone. But as I sat there with the cool evening settling over the lake, I realized something startling. I was not alone. Maria's memory lived in every stone of the villa. My own dignity, long buried, lived inside me again. Sophie's threats no longer mattered. Her silence, if it came, no longer frightened me. Some relationships do not survive boundaries, and maybe that was all right. Sometimes peace does not come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from distance. I raised my coffee cup toward the horizon, as if Maria were still beside me. "You were right," I whispered. "Patience matters. But so does strength." And I finally found it again. The lake's calm surface reflected back a man I finally recognized. Older, yes, but steady. No longer hollowed out by grief, no longer bent by manipulation. A man who remembered his worth. If you like this story, please subscribe and tell us about your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.